This is the I Love Success podcast. I'm Peter Jabrukowski, and I have made a vow to myself to help as many people as possible to achieve their dreams. Let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to the I Love Success podcast. I am super excited that you're here listening, watching, and I think the main reason why we got connected here is that you want something more in your life. You might be in a good place, you might be in a not so good place, or you might be in a great place, but you want something more. And that's why we're here. That's the reason why I started the I Love Success podcast, because I've always been interested in dreaming, but not only dreaming, going after my dreams. And I learned very quickly that it's very hard to do that yourself. They say go fast, go alone, go far, go together. We can learn so much from other people. And that's why I'm here on this journey. And I can't stop. I get to talk to so many amazing and cool people and share their life's experience with you. So thank you for being here. If you enjoy the show, please share it with somebody. I have a big fat mission. I want to help at least 10 million people in 10 years to go after their dreams. That's a number that I put there because I want to have something really exciting to wake up for in the morning. When my alarm rings at 5:40, I'm going to work. I gotta get something, to go out and work for. And I hope you have that in your life. If you don't, you'll find it. That's why we're here today, to share some knowledge and drop some truth bombs. I would encourage you to take some notes. I would encourage you to start thinking about these things and see how you can implement them in your life or people you care about in their life, so we can all improve and have a little bit more fun and make this journey here on the world in the world an enjoyable experience. This week's guest is a new friend of mine. He's a teen life coach, and I love what he's doing, and I want to learn more about what he's doing, because I think there's so many teens and kids out there struggling, and with the right mindset, the right tools, I think we can help so many great kids, that are not having the support, create that life that they want. So without further ado, let me welcome Dr. RJ Jackson to the I Love Success podcast. Whoop, whoop.
Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure, man. And let's just get started with, so a lot of the people that I meet that have this burning desire to help others, they at some point in their life were struggling. They needed help, they needed guidance. Can you just share in your life, is that the case for you, and what were you struggling with, and how did you get help?
Yeah, like I was in high school and I remember vividly this longing for someone to talk to, like some understanding of what I was going through. In my family, my dad is a military guy. So, he was very straight, very strict. Really, we didn't feel comfortable just talking to him about anything. So then it was left, for me to just kind of figure it out on my own. And I remember wanting some guidance. And, this desire just kept growing and growing. Even in college, I was like, man, I wish I had a mentor or someone to kind of like help me answer these questions. And then that's really what caused me to kind of serve the teenagers early on. I was like, I want to focus on the teens. That is a critical time, I believe, in life, is that transition to becoming a teenager. And it's really a vulnerable state. And I believe, to have someone to almost to help guide them is what we need. In fact, my mission, you have a huge mission, 10 million people. My mission is to have it where every single teenager has a life coach. So that's mine.
I love that. And can we just talk about that? I mean, especially, I think there's a lot of, young men out there that might have, a father that is a little bit machismo in a way, and there's not much talking and there's not much feelings involved. What advice do you want to give to those young teens, but also people that are, older, that never really had that, support to talk about their feelings and a little bit of those things?
Yeah, I mean, now today, it's really amazing because there's so much information. I think, growing up. And that's why I don't hold anything against my parents, because they were doing the best they could, with what they had. Nowadays, there's so much information. I believe we're more conscious of our emotions as a society. We're more conscious of our thoughts. So I believe there's just so much more information. So my encouragement to any teenager, maybe college student or even an adult, is to seek out a life coach. When you think of sports, you would never play a game without a coach. I mean, you just wouldn't even think to do that. But yet we, undergo this game of life in a sense by ourselves. And the nice thing about a coach is not that we have all the answers. In fact, I rarely would give a teenager sound advice, because I believe that, a lot of times teenagers have the answer. They oftentimes need just to overcome the fear, or they need to overcome the doubt or feeling judged, so we can help them break out of that. But my recommendation is definitely to have a coach.
I like that. And I do agree with you. I think the hardest part when it comes to hiring a life coach is, how do you know that it's a good one? In sports, for example, it's pretty easy. You go to a club where they have good results. If you want to learn how to dance, you can see what they have done with their other students. But this subject is much harder to know who to hire and who to really trust. So what advice can you give to somebody that's like, oh yeah, it makes sense, I need a coach, but how do I know that there's somebody that can actually help me?
No, you bring up a really good point. The industry is definitely unregulated. So with that can bring some unqualified people. In fact, you really don't need any type of training just to call yourself a coach. But at the same time, there's some advantages to the fact that it's not so regulated, because I believe that is really the downside of therapy as it relates to teenagers. And I'm going to answer your question, but I do want to hit this point. Is I actually believe that when a teenager is suffering from, say, anxiety or depression, really the first step is a coach. Because during these times when a teenager is growing, they're looking for an identity. Problem is that we give them some type of label. You're depressed, you have anxiety. Then they actually hold on to that label. Some of my biggest breakthroughs was just allowing or helping teenagers just to release the label that I'm a depressed kid. So I really think, in a sense, for therapy, it really does us a disservice to have a child come in already with the label, like, yep, you have depression, because then it sticks with them. So I think with coaching, we kind of help them understand, like, hey, we all experience different feelings. We all have different thoughts that go, that goes through our minds, but we have tools to overcome that. So really, I like the idea that is not so much regulated, but I think the regulation can bring in some unqualified people, as you mentioned. So my recommendation, if a person is looking for a life coach, is just what you said. You say you look at a dance, you can tell the results. You go to a club, results. That's it, results. Yeah. Look at their results, testimonials, just to see how many people they've coached. It's very interesting. I've been doing this for almost a decade, and I've coached over 5,000 teenagers. Wow. And over the years, we've had, anywhere between a 97 to 99% satisfaction rate. I'm always aiming for 100%. But what I found is that, I read a lot of the studies from psychologists, and I'm reading their studies, and I'm like, wow, like most of these studies only have a couple hundred teenagers. And when I look at my sample size, it's like over 5,000. So I believe really is important is just results, and then also experience. So I think those are two big ones that you should ask when you're seeking out a coach.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And speaking of, what are you seeing in your research from dealing with, about 5,000 teenagers? What is the top 3 things that teenagers are struggling with nowadays? And I think that's probably all of us as human beings. It will probably relate. We can probably relate to that.
Yeah. Depression is on the rise. It really is. And, nowadays I would say that we do kind of distinguish between the big D and little d is what I would call it. But ultimately it's this idea of clinical depression, more so from a physiological standpoint. So for this child, no matter what they try from a physiological standpoint, there's a chemical imbalance. There's a, thyroid issue. They really need to go to a pediatrician. And a lot of times they do need medication. But thankfully, that's only a small percent. Majority of the teenagers is more so mental. It's just the amount of thoughts that are coming in, these belief that I'm not enough. What they're focusing on really causes cycle of depression. So that's definitely a big one. So I would say depression is one. Two is anxiety. That's another one. I feel like every single teenager has anxiety, and the majority of the teens have been diagnosed with anxiety. And it's just really a big issue. I believe a lot of times it comes from oftentimes the beliefs, but they also have a lot of pressure, more pressure than we had. That's for sure. I remember in high school feeling some pressure, but then getting home and just feeling free on the weekends. I'm free. That is not the case these days. I mean, it's 24 hours of pressure. They're constantly looking at better lives than they have in their perspective. So it really brings a lot of pressure. And I would say the third one is just confidence. I think that's a huge one. A lot of times teenagers struggle with confidence. Either they have been diagnosed with ADHD, which brings their own set of struggles in school, and then to look and see, oh, I'm a straight C student, I'm failing. Well, that doesn't help your confidence at all. So those are by far the top three: depression, anxiety, and a lack of confidence.
Yeah, so let's break a couple of them down, because I don't think it's only teenagers that struggle with this. I think everybody listening here can relate, and they have felt these feelings at some time. So let's talk about beliefs. How do you work with your clients when it comes to beliefs, and how do we break limiting beliefs and change them or replace them with something better that does empower us? And if you're listening to this show right now, I'm I've changed my life by changing my beliefs, right? And you can probably attest to that, that it really works if you know how to do it. And even if you don't know how to do it, you can find a way. But we have an expert, so I really want to take advantage of that. So how do you work with your clients to replace bad beliefs into empowering beliefs?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. And the first step of that is just being aware. The scientists have discovered that we spend about 5% of the time conscious. That means the rest of the time we're not conscious, which means our subconscious is pretty much controlling our day to day. We have what we call a program. It's basically our subconscious mind. And it's like clockwork. We get this stimulus, this trigger, and immediately feel this way. So oftentimes just being aware that you have this belief, it can change your life, just the awareness. Now, number two that I work with teenagers on is just really distinguishing the difference between a belief and a fact. Oftentimes in their brain, they believe is a fact. And a lot of times it's not the case at all. It's just that they have spoken and they really have held on to that belief. So it feels like a fact to them. So just those two things helps a ton: awareness and understanding the difference between what is a fact, what is objective, what can we prove versus just something that you believe. And then the third step I bring them through this process is how to adopt a new belief. And the cool thing is, the same process rather, that they went through to believe what they believe now, we can go through the same process to believe something new. And I'll walk you through that process now. So we just want to think about the things that you believe. So just think of any belief about yourself that you would say is limiting, whether it's I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm not smart, I'm lazy, whatever you come up with. And you have to ask yourself, like, why do you have that belief? And what happened is some part of your life, there was some type of event. And from that event, you interpreted that event, or you gave it some meaning that, I'm not smart. Okay, maybe I failed a lot, so that means I'm not smart. So what you did from that standpoint is you start to speak it. You start to speak it to yourself, you start to speak it to other people, and then it really solidifies into the subconscious that it's a belief. Well, we're going to go through the same exact process for you to believe that you are smart. So I would tell you to think of a time when you did excel in school, or anything for that matter, where you really studied and you excelled. And once you think of that time, I want you to then start to speak those words, start to tell yourself, wow, I'm smart. And start to tell other people, oh, math is my best subject. Oh, I crush it in math. Math is so easy. I love it. And you start to speak this over and over, and then the subconscious will eventually adopt it. And now you have a new belief that's more empowering.
And in your perspective, why do you believe that a lot of people are struggling with changing their beliefs. I mean, we can sometimes meet people that are in their 70s or 80s and they're still negative. You know, they're still saying the same story over and over again. In your opinion, why do you think more people don't change this?
Yeah, I think, oftentimes, one, they're just not aware of it. When we look at the fact that our subconscious is basically running our lives, like we're just not conscious most of the time. We have this program. We just kind of follow the triggers, follow the programs. We follow our emotions, and we don't really uncover. And that's actually what one of the things about a coach that is huge. That's why I recommend a coach, is because a coach can uncover beliefs. And, for me, I'm an optimistic guy. I'm very positive. So when I was going through this exercise, when I first had a coach, I'm like, hey, you won't find anything. I'm pretty positive. And sure enough, after digging, you do uncover these limiting beliefs. So it's basically any belief that limits you, whatever that is. And so I believe, awareness is a big part. I think some people are just unaware. And number two, I think also they just don't know what to do about it. Yeah, I'm aware, but what do I do? Like, how do I just change what is in my head constantly? And I think the process I just shared should help.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I mean, even the small little thing, if you have like a ridiculous thought, like sometimes we have the ridiculous thought, I'm gonna get sick, I'm gonna die, for example. I think probably everybody has had that thought in the past 20 months, right? Uh, so, and then you talk to somebody and they're like, no, come on. It's like the statistic. You're a young guy, you're healthy. This is just you thinking. And only that little conversation helps so much. And we're not even talking about the professional digging deeper. So I think, I mean, for me, and I'm curious about your experience, it is for me, a big part of my life, very long time, I had very, very difficult sharing my weaknesses, sharing my deepest thoughts, even with my friends, because I had this fear of being hurt if I share my my weaknesses, right? I'm a martial artist. I was out competing for the national team, and it was this kind of jock mentality, even in the dressing room, like you should be strong, right? And I had this fear of being hurt and being seen as weak. And now I've worked on that, but I don't think I'm alone. I think there's many, many people that has this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're definitely not alone. That's for sure. I think it's especially with the adults, because, like I said, they didn't have the information, right? So we didn't have a lot of coaches when we were younger. And so a lot of information wasn't there. You thought that just who you are, this is how your life experience really is. And I believe when you can step outside of your life experience from your lens and understand that oftentimes what you're experiencing is nothing more of a program. It's just, hey, I have these beliefs. These beliefs cause certain thoughts. Out of these thoughts, I'm going to focus on some thoughts. And anytime I focus on a set of thoughts, it will cause some type of feeling. And that feeling will cause either me to do something or not do anything. And once you kind of understand the process, you stop putting so much energy into it. You stop taking yourself so seriously. If you start to feel sad, you'd be like, wait a minute, is this really about me, or is it really about the thoughts that I'm thinking about at the moment? And you really start to see the process for what it is. And I believe that can give you some power in a sense, because you can always change one of those aspects.
Yeah, and just asking for help and talking about, I mean, even when we're talking about this right now, it makes me feel better, right? Because we're sharing vulnerability, and we realize that we all have it. It's part of the human experience, but there's tools, and that's why it's awesome with people like yourself that can help us unpack that. So let's talk about anxiety. That's also something big. What is anxiety, and how can we as human beings work on that?
Yeah, anxiety is nothing more than fear. That's all it is. It's fear, oftentimes, of something that hasn't happened yet. So we're like looking into the future, and we basically create this future for us, and it's fearful. It's not the way we want it. In fact, I play this game with the teenagers that I coach. I call it the rabbit hole game, and it's ultimately about hearing out this fear. So in other words, whenever you have some type of anxiety about something, say for instance, there's a test and you think you're going to bomb the test. So you're going to start to breathe fast. You're going to, your heart rate is going to increase. You're going to experience this in your body, and you're going to be fearful. And oftentimes, whenever your body is in that state, you don't perform your best because it's, I call this fight or flight experience is we really narrow into that. And we're not able to really tap into all the sources of our mind. So we want to get out of that state, especially, you're a competitor, so you understand that as well. So we play this game, I call it the rabbit hole game. And ultimately what that is seeing the fear all the way through. Say, okay, what are you thinking about this test? What's the worst can happen? Well, I'm gonna fail. Okay, you fail. Then what? Well, if I fail, it's gonna lower my GPA. Great, it's gonna lower your GPA. Then what? And we just take them on to this kind of rabbit hole to see how deep it goes. And oftentimes when they feel like, that is not that bad because say for instance you fail, well then you know that you have tools and you have options to then do something different. And once they kind of remove that, then the fear is really not there anymore.
I like that. And I do a similar game when it comes to risk because a lot of times in my life, I've feared taking the steps, but somehow I've done it. And then when I have other people asking me like, how did you do it? And it's the same thing. First, I ask myself, what's the worst thing that could ever happen? Kind of similar to the rabbit hole game. And then I go into like, what's the best thing that can ever happen? And that immediately put me in a positive state. And then you just gotta understand that, there's almost always a bigger upside than the downside.
Absolutely. And it's funny because that's actually the second step. So I bring them through the worst case scenario and then we bring them through the best case scenario. And then we, if they're still stuck, we'll actually key in on one of the things they're worried about. And we'll say, okay, say for instance, you just bombed the test. Now it lowered your GPA. You're experiencing it right this second. So what do? Like, do you just like, is the school over? Is the rest of your life over? Or do we figure out other ways? And, oftentimes they think through and they figure out other ways. And then it say, hey, it's not so bad. I don't know why I'm so stressed about this.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to talk about confidence. But before that, I just want to tap into success and the definition of success. This show is called the I Love Success podcast. I'm really working on redefining success because I do believe it's different for each and every one of us. And I'm curious when it comes to teens growing up, with all these impulses with Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of that stuff, and there's so many impulses of what success should look like. How does that affect teenagers today? And what are you doing to kind of take them out of that equation and find their own definition of success?
No, you're absolutely right. Everyone has a different definition of success. But, as a teenager and you're seeing a lot of these influencers experiencing a certain life, then it's very easy to adopt their definition of success and put it on yourself. And then it's an unfair type of, goal that you have for yourself because you don't see the behind the scenes. All you see is what they have 1 million followers, but you don't see all the work they put in behind it. So you're right. I believe that's actually what causes a lot of depression, anxiety, and all that is the fact that they see so much perfection around them, but it's perceived perfection. We don't really know what's happening behind the scenes. So what we do is really, we agree on a very common, simplified definition of success, understanding that everyone has their own idea of it, but ultimately at the very basic, it's having a goal and accomplishing it. It's a very basic. Now, then we dive into what goal do you want for yourself? And a lot of that we really dive into the why. I think the why is very important because they will uncover the fact that I really wanted 10 friends as my goal because I thought everybody else had 10 friends. So, I think uncovering the why of why they want this goal and then giving them something tangible, a strategy, a system, so they can actually pursue the goal, which increases their chances of accomplishing it.
Yeah. And how does, when you talk about setting goals, I'm curious because I wrote a book about goal setting. How do you implement that? Do they write down their goals? What's the process that you work with your teens, and does it work?
No, that's a great question because I know that nowadays there's just so much information on, affirmations and visualizations and all that. And we definitely talk about all of it. But I think the first step is they have to be clear what their goal is. And what I find with teenagers is that there's not any clarity. And I would tell you the most common goal ever since the pandemic is friends. I mean, like, I'm coaching so many teenagers, hundreds now. Like in my program now, we have hundreds of teenagers at this one time. And I would say majority of their goals are is to have a friend. I just want friends. And when you think of that in itself, that's really not a goal. That's a want, but it's not a goal. A goal, we need clarity. Like when you say, I want friends, first of all, what is a friend to you? Is it somebody you just talk to every now and then, or somebody you share secrets with? And then we want to know, how many? If you say, I want friends, do you want one? Do you want six? Do you want seven? So we try to help them to develop this system of bringing clarity to the goal. And I actually believe visualization helps a ton with that, just to see yourself in that experience. And then from there, we work them through a process of brainstorming and actually taking action towards one of the steps, and just keep the momentum going and understanding these emotions that helps us to want to take action towards our goal.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that they want to have friends, because one thing that I've realized in my research, and like I've met UFC champions, Olympians, New York Times best, like you name it, they've been on the show. And if we go down to the core, the main motivation for most people is they want to be loved.
That's it.
As human beings, that's what we want to be. And we would do all this crazy shit just to be loved. And we think that people are going to love us if we accomplish all this stuff. And it breaks my heart sometimes, because I see a lot of people, they do so much in order to be loved, and they realize at the end of the road that it was not about the accomplishments. It was fun, but it was about being loved. And there's a lot, there's a lot of different ways to become loved.
No, I think you're absolutely right. We find that with the teenagers, the number one desire for them is like love and connection and significance. But ultimately, if you look at significance, it goes back to being loved. So you're absolutely right.
And let's talk about confidence, because I think that might be one of the most important things in life when it comes to creating what you want and getting it. So it seems to be a very important trait. How can teenagers and also adults that are not confident start working on their confidence?
Yeah, in fact, when I first started coaching, that was it. I was a confidence coach, and that's all I focused on, is helping shy teenagers come out their shell. So confidence, you're right, is very, very important. I think it's absolutely critical for a teenager to have confidence in order to tap into their potential. We see it now of so many adults who are not, really maximizing their potential. They're playing it safe. They're scared. They're probably in a career they don't really enjoy. And my hope is that I can break this cycle by helping the teenagers to develop confidence so they can just go out and pursue anything they want. They don't have to follow the normal path or in the box path. Oh, you got to go to school. You got to do this. No, if they have some desire, I'm very encouraging of go pursue your desire. And confidence is a huge, huge piece of that. So we work on a lot of things when it comes to confidence. One, we have to understand that confidence is a feeling, and we really educate the teenagers on feelings, because feelings in many ways are messengers. They give us a message. They're not really designed to hold on forever. Even, we wish we can hold on to happiness forever, but it's just fact of the matter, we don't. Feelings just come and go, and it's really based on belief systems and what we're focusing on at the moment. But understanding that's okay. Sometimes you're going to feel confident, sometimes you're not. But what's more important, I believe, is the mindset. A confident mindset is what we're after, to really create these beliefs that you can truly accomplish anything, that you're unique for a purpose. And as I'm mentioning purpose, so that's something else we really work with teenagers, because that's a big part of confidence. Once you know that you were created, whatever your beliefs are, that you were created, or you're here for a reason, and that you are equipped with certain skills and gifts, then what is there not to be confident about? Because you're not competing against anybody else because only you have those gifts. So really helping them to start with the confident mindset is a big one. And then we give them practical advice, how to look at, their peers in the eye, how to smile. We always talk about these resting mean faces that some people may have naturally. So getting a habit of just smiling is more inviting. So we work with them also with practical ways of experiencing this confidence as well.
Yeah, I mean, as a teenager, I'm just trying to think back on my life because I was chubby, I was bullied, and I didn't have any friends. First I had friends, and then high school started and everybody started drinking and smoking. I didn't want to do that. I was the shortest in school. I used to be fat, but now I was just skinny and short and didn't want to drink and party. And I wasn't really good at anything cool. So it was hard to be confident in those situations, right? Because everybody was trying to, get a girlfriend and go to parties and all those things. What helped me was that I always did karate, but once I started to get a little bit success and feel like I was good at something, that slowly improved my confidence, even though being good at karate didn't help in the real world, so to speak, where you have to be tall and big to attract the girls and whatever, and drink and smoke. But slowly, it helped me a lot. Can you just talk about that and what your experience with those types of teens that had the same kind of experience that I had?
Yeah, I would say a lot of teens are having a similar experience. And I think what you did there when you started to experience this feeling of confidence in karate, because you were excelling so well, you were able to anchor that feeling. And that's something we teach them, is how to anchor the feeling of confidence, because it's really just a feeling. You feel it. And you were able to anchor that, and that